Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of the Art2Life podcast. Listen, thanks so much for all those great questions you guys left on the website, referring to this really cool utility little button that I've put on that my team put on the website. If you go to the art2lifepodcast.com on the right hand side and you click on any of the episodes, on the right hand side you'll see a little yellow button, a little tab there, and you can click on that and you can record your question or comment and I can answer them. And it's super great, especially for a podcast. Know that if you do this, I can't answer all the questions. I already have more than I can answer, but it's so great because there's really good ones. Know also that I can't, I so appreciate it and I read them all. Okay, I read them all, but I don't have time to reply to every single person, but I will answer some of them, which actually I'm going to do today. And then the third thing is that if you do leave a question or a comment, it's in your voice, and that's the whole point. And I want you to know that I will add your name and play your question to our listeners on the podcast. So I just want to give you a heads up that that's the plan, and I'll show you how that works today. So today I do have a few. There were so many good questions and so many cool comments, but I thought I would take a few of them and answer them because each one of them I could do a whole podcast on. So here's how it's going to work. These are some of the questions that were asked, and the first one has to do with finishing. And Kathy left this from Barcelona, one of our listeners. So check it out.
This is Kathy here from Barcelona in Spain. I'm an avid follower of your Sunday vlog and your weekly podcast, and I'm also a second year student on your CVP program. I'm into trying to paint abstract. I love your work. You talk so much about the process, the process being as much what it's all about, process as much as product. But I'm just wondering, when you know a piece has finished, when do you know that it's complete? Because I think even more so with abstract paintings than realist paintings, it's difficult to know when it's finished. How do you get closure on a piece and leave it?
Kathy, this is a great question. And this comes up a lot. So there was, I think, 4 people asked this question just since I've been offering this ability to send a voice message in. So I want to speak to it. And this is something, by the way, that we go way into in the Creative Visionary program in the later weeks. But I can give you some of the essential ideas to it. First of all, what you're developing in your self is an ability to sense that completion for yourself. So in other words, some of this is personal. We can look at our work, and if it feels satisfying to us, then that's pretty good. If you feel like there's a completion, that's a good indication. And it makes sense, right? Because if you're just starting out, you don't feel complete. You don't really know. You do something and you're not sure, but as you go further, you get a better sense in relationship to the other things you've made, whether or not this thing feels satisfying. It's like, I relate it to a meal that they don't quite give you enough, and you still want something more. You're not like a really good meal. The wine's good, the dessert's not too big, and it just leaves you feeling sated. And this is something that you learn for yourself. And so it's a felt sense. So that's something that you get to develop over time. And you can ask yourself, if you look at 3 or 4 of your things you've made in the last month or 3 months or whatever, which one of those gives you that feeling more, right? And then if one of them does and one of them will, you can ask yourself why. What is it about these that for me that gives me a better sense of kind of completion. You might be really interested in color, or you might love it when a painting is really imbalanced, or you might love it a certain amount of detail or a certain looseness of brushstroke. And so that for you is completeness, signals completeness. So know that it's different for everyone. The second thing is this idea of distance. Does it look good from a distance? And I know it's crazy because we're not working on it from a distance, but it helps to get further back from it. And if it works from a distance, and it's what we call the loud conversation, and I've touched upon this in the free workshops that I've done for the Creative Visionary Program. We go into this, but it's really that loud, that high contrast pattern of dark and light from a distance. I mean, 30 feet away, And so what is that? And if that is interesting and the design is strong, that will give a huge, it'll move you really close to being satisfying. So that's a big chunk of it. And the next big chunk of it is, will this look good close up? Okay, does this look good close up? I mean, when you're working at it when you go up 12 inches away, when you walk up to something in the gallery and you look at it close and you can't even see the whole thing, you're just looking at some of the brush strokes or the surfaces or the texture. Are those rich? Is there subtlety? John Singer Sargent, I just saw a show of his, and that's just flashing in my mind right now, and at the Legion of Honor in San Francisco. And his paintings have that. They are amazing from a distance. You walk into this show and they look incredible from a distance. Just the graphic nature of them, just the compositions, just the distant thumbnail view is exciting. And then you get up, and at each step you get closer and closer and more information. So it has to work close up and feel satisfying, and it has to work from a distance. Sometimes, and I see this a lot, artists miss this close-up view, or they miss the distant view. Usually it's the close-up one, the subtlety. It's not enough to just have it be bold. It can work on both. Have that subtlety and that refinement, and then that rawness, and then that boldness. You need both. Those are differences, and they play off each other, and they look really good, and they give you a sense of completion. I use this question for me, and it really forces me to keep going, because usually we stop too soon. If I found this thing on the street, if I looked at it, if I came across this walking home, would it create wonder for me? And like, that is a really high bar, but that makes it so it stops you doing the same thing again and again and again. Because if it doesn't do that for you a little bit, like there's a mystery, or, oh my God, I love how this part just has this, I took this chance and this color combination, like, that's cool. I love that. I don't even know how I did it. That is that sort of wonder, curiosity part that I feel needs to be in strong work, that gives you that sense of completion. Like, I don't know what this is, but I'm keeping it. The work that, would you sell this right away? Like, or do you need to hold on to it for a little while? So we might be talking about how to finish work, but more importantly, I think we need to talk about how to finish and make it amazing. Finishing work means you've said, this is good. This is ready to be put down because I have taken enough territory. I've gained enough ground in my art world here, in what I normally do. I'm in new terrain. I feel good about it. I'm excited about it. This thing I just made is exciting, and I want to do more now, and I'm going to stop because I just want to savor this. Now, I know we can't make all our work like that, but that's the spirit of this thing. That's the vibe of it that we want to have. And I guess I have a lot to say around this, so I hope The next point around this is, and I use past work a lot. Does it have, compared to other things I've made before, does it have more energy or less? Is there a vitality? Is it the same? Because we want it more. We want more juice in it. This is the progression. Your work goes from a contracted place to an expansive place, to getting better and better at showing more and more and more and more of you. So if it's sort of below what you've done in the past, push yourself to go further. And often it's just right there. You just have to push a little further. And I'm in the business of helping artists and coaching artists, and this is the point. It's like that. There's the finish line, and we just gotta we gotta push it. We gotta risk it one more time, and that often makes something really powerful. And it can wreck it a little, but then you need to spend more time and get it. But you don't want to give up too early. You want to have that energy. So feeling that, it's a felt sense again, but other people can feel it too. You can look at it and just look at 4 or 5 things you've made. Which one? And then ask yourself, well, that has energy. Does this in comparison? So use your work. That's why you're in a practice, because it's your learning. You're teaching yourself how to do this as you go. It's about differences, ultimately, in something that feels finished. We need something playing against something else. Like, there is no cool movie that doesn't have tension, that doesn't have, a journey of difficulty and overcoming something. So this is about differences. This is about putting 2 things together that are opposites. And that's what gives you the energy. That's what makes you feel alive. And that's what will make this work feel different and feel complete. Different meaning that it hasn't been done before and kind of exciting. But it needs to make you feel alive. And we're made to feel alive. We feel excitement when we experience things like that. And your work needs to be that. So asking yourself, what is it that this is primarily showing, if it's abstract or whatever, and how can maybe it's really colorful, or maybe it's really spontaneous, what can I bring in that will accentuate the primary thing, one of the main things that this work is about. If it's realistic, I've painted this way, realistically, and sometimes I will just take a trowel and I'll just scrape across the realistic face or area that I've worked so hard on, and it just blurs it a little and it looks even more realistic, because those are opposites that are playing together. So those are some tips that what I think about finishing, and one of them can give you a little more clarity. So thanks so much for that, Kathy. That's just a great question. So our next question comes from Otis, and it relates to the Your Brain on Art conversation I had with Ivy and Susan on their new book, Your Brain on Art. And it was about neuroaesthetics. So he's talking about flow. So let's have a listen to Otis's question.
Hello, Nick. This is Otis calling from Ventura, California. I get the idea of how art has the power to transform society in a positive way. However, I'm wondering if this new book talks about, in terms of neuroscience, how you can continue or use your brain or train your brain to become better, to flow more, to create more freely, etc., etc. That's my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, Otis, thanks for that question. So yes, the book does go into that, and the book for me was kind of profound, because it really is the science behind what I've been teaching and coaching for most of my life, and a big chunk of this. Your question is what I've been asking myself my whole life, because if I could figure out how to stay in this more, how to get more in flow state, if I could make this process easier and more efficient and enjoy it more. That's what I was doing on my all the time. So it would completely change my life and improve it dramatically, which is why I'm still doing this. So I have a few things to say around this. So actually, Otis, I sent your question on to Ivy because she's a friend of mine, and she shot back with a little quick sentence, and she says, the less he critiques and judges what he is doing, the more he just does it. That will build capacity. And I think this is, it's simple, but the idea here is that thinking about making art isn't at all the thing. It's very, very different than what happens when you make it. I don't know if that makes sense. I tend to worry, or I used to a lot more, worry about my work and, where I was and how good it was and what was I going to do the following day and would I get it? Would people like it? Or, is this the right solution for that painting? And I would spend a lot of time and effort thinking about my art when I wasn't making it, which is a whole rabbit hole. But that isn't the activity of art making. Once I realized, well, that's not actually art making. I'm not in any kind of flow state. I'm just worrying about the future. So if you don't like that part, luckily that's not part of art, and you don't need to really do that too much. But the part that you do get to do is the part when you drop into something. And when you drop into it, when you're making it, and you're no longer thinking about the results or worrying about what is going to happen with it or what the outcome's going to be, when you're experimenting and playing. And this is one of the things in the Creative Visionary program that it's fundamental to art making, this idea of just wandering and experimenting and having time to do that, and just seeing what occurs because it's so mysterious, and following what you enjoy, finding your way as you go, as I like to say, is a state of presence. And presence is flow. When you're present, the concerns about I don't have time to make art, or I can't sell anything I'm making, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not inspired. These common challenges are not there. And so that's the clue, is it's in the doing. So what I like to do, and this is my practice, and it's something I've shared, and I'm sharing it more and more. If you see me streaming on Instagram sometimes, or I will be just painting in my sketchbook. I'll be just doing something. I just take 10 or 15 minutes a day and play. Just experiment. It's the first thing I do. It's often the first thing I do when I get up. I just play. There's nothing, I have a whole process and pages in my book and everything. I can't go into that now, but doing this little and often thing is how you do it. When you can get in the habit of just making an art, doodling on a piece of paper, instead of thinking you have to wait till Sunday when you have 3 or 4 hours where you can just totally do your art, and you only have that amount of time, and you worry about it more, and here comes the day, and I don't want to be distracted, and then something happens on that day and you can't go and you beat yourself up. Those are the things that break the flow. But you can get it, and if you do this often enough, you can stay in it in your day, like touch it every single day. And what'll happen, and I'd love to know, Otis, if this can work for you, but what I discovered and what I've seen for other people is that this little thing, 10 minutes, I call it a 5-minute art practice. I always end up spending 10, but it can go to like half an hour. And then I come back to it because while the page is drying, I flip the page and I'll work on something else, and I just get into it. And so it's just a way of dropping yourself into it. So you're in that art space. It doesn't matter what you're making, by the way. You can have this way of thinking creatively, Like if you're making pancakes, you can do a pancake a weird shape. And that is, you can feel it when you're turning on, like, wow, I wonder if I do it this way. I wonder if I, you know, what if I took, like, I just rearranged the whole cabinet in my house. I had all these tea boxes, and I totally got into this thing, and it was this visual puzzle, cool, fun thing to do that looks so great with the way I did these tea boxes. But I wasn't organizing the kitchen or like doing laundry task. I was doing a creative thing. It was using the same kind of presence that I bring to my art making. So, you know, art to life and life to art, those things, this is your life. And bringing this in, so you're bringing that creativity and that mode of presence and constructing things, setting things up. It's the way you think about it. It's that thinking mode where how you can be just creative and be playful and curious. That's it. That's how you start using your brain in a new way. Music can help you do this, how you hear things, the smells of things, how visual things that are around you, they can remind you of what brings you alive. And you're just this organism that's setting these things up for yourself. So I hope that was helpful. And let me know if some of this, how this worked for you. I would say the biggest change for me in the last year or so has come from a daily art practice, and it's changed my large paintings. It's made it more fun. I enjoy doing it with other people. It's really, really great, and it just reminds me every day that I can do this thing and how cool it is, you know. All right, so the next question comes from Michelle, and she has this to ask.
Hi, Nick. I am currently an alumni, CVP 2023. I know you've spoken many times before about the gap. I understand it. But I find myself down in the hollow so often. And, just wondering, how do I keep telling myself that there will be an upward journey here at some point, that I won't stay in the hollow forever?
You know, first off, Michelle, I so relate to what you're saying. And I think so many people do. And I know a lot of people do, because there was several questions about this exact same thing. And, you know, we can just hear it in your voice. It's rough, you know, because we're making something, we're trying to make something, and especially in the beginning of doing something new. And this can be the same for somebody who's far along. And know that you're going to go through this many times. It's not about like figuring it out and then you always are at this higher level forevermore. That's what's going to happen. You're going to get through this hollow, and then you're going to be on top of the world, but then it's going to become boring, and then you're going to have to do a new thing, and you won't be good at the new thing, whatever that is, and you're going to feel distraught, and there's a little bit of that hollow feeling comes again. So know that this is cyclical, but makes it that much more important to get some ideas on how to make this go through quicker and easier. First of all, Michelle, this place you're in where you're kind of more at the lower end of what you're making, and it allows a couple things. It allows you to take more risks because you don't have a lot to lose. This is the time where you're free. You don't have a gold standard yet that people are expecting of you, that you're expecting of yourself. That this is exactly when you get to experiment and be risky. And this is why you're in this patch, is to do something. You know, you want to bring something from this time, this hard time. When you come out of it, you want to have brought something with you out of it. I remember when I went through a really difficult patch about 15 or 20 years ago. My whole life kind of caved. And I remember thinking, I'll probably get through this, but I want to have something good from this time that I did, that I can look back and say, man, that was like the worst. But at least, but I did this thing then. For me, it was writing. I joined this writing group and I started to tell stories. And that's what I did during that. I was around people. It was fun. It was funny. I needed people. And I dare say that it was when the idea for this book I'm writing came out. So that's cool to look back and say, wow, what did that dark, harder time make possible? So that's kind of a reframe, right? Any low patch, you can use that. What does this make possible that you're doing? That because you don't know yet, you get to try a bunch of things. Now's the time to try something really wildly different. Clearly, you're not on the fast track to having this thing work. So push it. This is probably why you're still in this low thing. Your soul's waiting for you to do something a little edgier. And then this idea of looking back at what you've made, Michelle. Look back at the last year and choose 3 things that were closer. We all can do this. If you have 10 things, and we all know which one's you'll probably be able to choose pretty easily which one you like the best. Interesting, usually everyone will also. It'll be the one that feels more like you. It'll be the one that has clues as to where you need to go, which is helpful, especially for this question. But what made the best art last year? I mean, really look at that piece and ask yourself, what was I doing there? And the clue is you need to do more of that in this time. Okay, because that's going to move the needle for you. It worked. You're just taking what worked and you're doing more of that. So that has to do with kind of looking back, and then looking forward. You can imagine, if you ask yourself, what is this new work that I haven't made yet, that I can't entirely see yet? What does it feel like? And I know that seems crazy, but you can feel into what the work wants to feel like. What kind of work do you want to, if you were sitting here right now, I'd say, what does the work feel like that you want to make, Michelle? What is that like? And it could be spacious, it could be easy, it could be depending on whatever it is you're wanting to do. And it's really important to get clear on the feeling of the thing. And the reason is because this is going to help you recognize things that you're doing in your art now that feel the same way. Most of your work doesn't feel that way. That's why it's still where it's at. We need to get more of it feeling the way you desire it to feel, right? It's amazing that you can feel the work, that you can feel unimagined work before it's done. It's really something. This, more than anything, will speed you along, will pull you out of that really quickly. It's kind of amazing. Write it down. Write 5 words down that describe this amazing work that you haven't made yet. And now you have something to compare what you're making right now with. Does the work you're making now feel like that? What can I do to make the thing that's in front of me right now more like that? It's kind of amazing, because that is what's going to make you love your work and get you through this, right? It's kind of incredible. It again, and I spoke about this earlier, it's an energetic state. When things feel exciting, when things feel good, when you imagine what you want, there's energy there. That's you expressing, if you're truly leaning into what feels right for you, there's a congruency and you'll feel an uptick of energy. it's like people talking about what they truly, okay, wave a magic wand. What would you love to happen this year? And at first, you're cynical, and it's like, oh, I just don't want to work so much or whatever. But I mean, no, really, what would it look like? What really lean into that? And is it, like, what island do you want to go to in Greece, and how do you want to get there, and what would that look like? You start talking about this and start really imagining this, and you will feel like you're in this place. You will feel more energy. So this is what we need to do. You have to start feeling the way you want to feel before you get there, and then the thing can start coming together much more quickly. And it's that energetic state that you can just sense, and you can bring that energy up in the thing you're working on. Your new art is going to come from a new way of thinking. Of course, it's not what you've been making has attached to it as a way of thinking, and it's giving you results. And you need a different outcome. You need a better outcome. So it doesn't matter. It's not about really probably the paint you're using or the brushes or even the style. It has to do with the way you're thinking about it. So be on the lookout for that, right? Like it's a new way of thinking. It will feel a little different when the breakthroughs often come by when you just kind of push and do something like, I don't even care. At this point, I'm just going to go for this. And it's like, oh my God, that right there, I like that part. I just closed my eyes and did something. There's an intuition that's used in this, but you can recognize it. And it's that kind of, it's usually a bigger kind of thinking, a looser, a freer. It feels more like you. These are the touchstones. This work, for you to love it more and for it to be even better, wants to feel more like you. It wants to feel like you. It's that idea of like, dancing when no one's looking. It's that kind of thing. We need you free. When you're free, you can make powerful art. And when I say powerful, art that you love and that art that feels like you. What's so cool is that you're not alone in knowing that this is really much better, it's not like you're just going to like this. This will be liked more by more people. It will resonate with more people. This is the business plan. This is what's so cool about it, that people that don't understand or are not privy to this conversation, your art will speak to them more. You put up 5 things. If you've done shows, I've done a lot of art shows and shown my art in many places. And the best picture that I make is the one that most people like. Even people who don't understand art, they're just drawn to it. And it has to do with this, that because it's more personal, it's more different, it's more like you. Okay, so thanks so much for that question, Michelle. So I'm going to take one more of these, and her name's Sandra, and she too had a question that several other people did as well. But let's have a listen.
It is extremely challenging to scale up in size. How do you make sure that the scale is appropriate for the size of the canvas? I'm moving from 16 by 20 up, and I'm struggling.
Okay, so great question. Again, several people asked this. I love this idea of scaling up, because just like so many things in art, it's just a metaphor. Going from a contracted place, a small thing, to a much bigger thing is what we're always doing in our life, and learning how to do that. We get confident and we're terrified, and we raise and ask a question, in a book signing, and then maybe we give a talk at a public library for 20 people, and then we go on a stage, and if we're learning how to public speak, or we're trying to share something in front of more and more people, you just learn how to do it. You're just scaling up. You're just getting better at doing this thing. And you do it in steps. So the first piece of this is that you do it kind of in steps. It is really difficult to go from a small thing to a giant thing, a 12-inch thing to a 48-inch thing. And it doesn't really matter whether it's, sculpture or whatever. It's the same thing. The reason why scaling up is kind of a bugaboo and kind of challenging is that it has to do with the fact that you're not thinking, your thinking hasn't caught up with what you want to do. We get comfortable at scale, at a certain size. And generally, and I'll just generalize, if you have a 12-inch thing or a 10-inch thing and you're working at your table and you're looking at it, and it's just like I'm sitting here right now and it's right in front of me like a dinner plate, and I'm working on it, and at one point it was pretty scary to work on this small painting, and I'd struggle with it and I couldn't know what to do, but eventually you kind of start getting comfortable with it, and you've done some of these, and then you want to go bigger. But you're used to looking at things kind of close up. You're used to considering the whole picture. If you look at the whole picture, which is important to do, you want to look at the whole thing as well as details of it. It's kind of easy to do that because you just look down and there's the dinner plate and you're only 1.5 feet away. But when you go to 48 inches, and you still have to get just as close to work on that at 48 inches, that larger painting or drawing, you're still working from the same distance away, but you can't see the whole thing anymore. So what we tend to do is we tend to work on small parts of it. I call it partitioning, and it's something I go over. We go into in the Creative Visionary program. That's our 12-week program. We're doing it right now. We launch it every spring, but it's so common, I came up with a name for it called partitioning. And what it means is that you're doing a large painting, but you're just doing a bunch of small paintings on a large painting. And check it out. If you look at your work, Sandra, on the large ones that aren't working, you'll see that if you want to cut it up into a bunch of smaller pictures, because they would have 5 that look really good or 6 that look really good, that's just because you're thinking the same way. And you're doing small paintings, you're just gluing them all together. But the problem is it doesn't work as a large painting. It just looks like a bunch of small pieces glued together. So there's a few ways to get around this. Again, it's scale up so you can gradually get better at this, right? Don't go from like small to giant in one step. You need to get distance. You need to get distance from this thing. So you have to get out of your chair now and you have to walk away so you can see this piece of art small. So you can see the whole thing and the marks and the whole boldness of it and what it looks like from a distance. It was easy to do it on the smaller ones because you were plenty far away, but you've got to get up, walk away, and look at it from 10 feet, 15 feet, even 20 feet, and then go walking back up. And that's a new kind of thing. That's a new thing where you've got to learn to like look from a distance and then think, okay, I got to change that part of it. And then you got to remember that and you got to walk all the way up to it and know how to do it in a strong enough way. So this relates to the next piece of this, that you, in order to scale up, not only does the picture get bigger, but the energy and the marks, the energy and the vitality that you bring to this thing has to be bigger too. It won't work. What worked on a spontaneous little pencil mark on a small picture won't really work in the same way if you do that bigger on a large surface. Because why? The pencil line is so skinny in relationship to the square area that it won't it won't read. It won't do the same thing. And you're sitting there like, well, I always do these scratchy things with a pencil. It always works. Why isn't it? This is driving me nuts. Well, that's why it doesn't work. It has to be scaled up. You've got to go to the store and get, some kind of lead or some kind of graphite bar or something. So there's a relationship. It all is in proportion. If you're bold on a small picture, let's say you've got a 12-inch picture and you're going to take a 2-inch brush and you do a big like red mark across it. That same mark with a 2-inch brush on the large painting will not work. It's not bold enough. It's not wide enough. Because why? The picture, it'll just look like a tiny little red line at the bottom. So you've got to now get new materials. Your tools and materials have to scale up. You need bigger brushes. You need bigger ways to make marks. They're all in proportion. And this is why I, recommend starting small so you can learn at a size, and then you can learn to translate that up. It's much easier to learn to be bold on a small thing. That's a smaller amount of boldness than when you have a 7-foot painting and you're sitting there with a $45 tub of red cadmium paint and you're nervous about wasting it. It's just there's a method to this that you really you need to go in gradual steps with it. So moving back from it, you scaling up your tools, scaling up your energy. And I notice if you're working on a small thing at your table, you can just move your wrist and make a mark all the way across it. But if you're working on a 5-foot thing, you've got to use your whole arm. So it's really dynamic. You've got to get a bigger tool. You got to make the mark. You got to be, resourced. So you're hydrated and you're going for this. It's more of a physical thing. You're showing up even more than you have before and in a more powerful way. It's a bigger ask. It's like going on stage in front of 1,000 people as opposed to, making a live stream post on Facebook or something. You're on stage, everyone can see you. So, you got to bring that energy to it. And then another point here, and it's often overlooked, is that when you scale up, there's some things you can get away with at a small scale. You can put a bunch of things in a smaller picture. And there's just something about it's just consumable. It doesn't move you so much because of the scale. We're all kind of the same size, and a thing that's about, the size of your head or a little bigger, we're more comfortable with that size and we're more tolerant of it. So, but when you go bigger, if you have a lot of extraneous things, you have a lot of things in it, and I'm not saying that it can't be complicated. I'm just saying that I'm talking more about your clarity of what you love, what interests you, what's the primary thing in there. There's a singularity that can be that if felt can be created in a larger work and make it successful. Often you don't need as much when you're at scale. Does that make sense? It's like, it's powerful because it's as big as us. So an indecisive thing done 5 or 10 times on a small picture just feels kind of like, it's like background. But an indecisive thing done at scale feels indecisive and is more confusing than if you just nail it and go for it and commit to one thing. And this is something that I'm not sure that anyone has ever really talked about this before, and I'm not even sure if it's real. It is for me, and it's something that I notice in my work. So I'm just kind of sharing this because I think there's something to it, that working at scale is more challenging because it's less forgiving. And we are less tolerant of a giant thing that we're standing in front of, that is indecisive. It just feels, it's like when a painting is powerful and it's large, it's amazing. It can just take your breath away and transport you. But a painting that's large, that's not really working, is really like you're less tolerant. So anyway, so I hope some of those questions, I'm kind of running out of time here. I hope some of those answers to those questions were helpful. Again, there's so much here that comes about when we're creating and we're living in a creative way. And I love these questions. Again, let me know. Keep them coming, you guys. This is so great. Again, if you want to ask a question, if you want to record a message, you can do that by going to Art2Life podcasts and click on that yellow tab on the right-hand side of the page. It says Ask Nick a Question. Click that and you can record a question. So listen, you guys, thanks so much for being here. And if this is helpful for you, please share it with somebody else or write a review. This is what makes this, people find it. And it's just been really awesome because a lot of people have been finding this, and our community's growing. And I'm just really, really grateful for your support and you being here. So you guys, thanks so much for being here, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye.